There are aspects of eating in the 1960s that younger generations may never fully grasp. It wasn't just the music or the fashion that was different. The food itself was fundamentally unlike what we have today. That tomato your grandmother sliced for a summer sandwich contained more vitamins and minerals than 5 supermarket tomatoes today. The chicken your mother roasted for Sunday dinner hardly resembled the factory-farmed birds shrink-wrapped in plastic now. Fruits, vegetables, meat, and eggs were fresher, more flavorful, and truly nourishing. Something shifted between then and now, quietly but profoundly, altering the way we grow, process, and consume food. We lost not just taste and nutrition, but a connection to the land, the seasons, and the natural rhythms that once defined the meals on our tables. The soil was alive. Looking at 1960s farming from today, it's clear we went off course. Industrial agriculture promised higher yields, lower costs, and abundance, but it delivered depleted food, eroded soil, and environmental damage. Modern supermarkets offer endless variety, yet variety without nutrition isn't progress. It's merely more choices among weakened options. The lessons of the past are striking. Traditional farming wasn't backward or primitive. It was the result of centuries of trial, error, and observation. Methods like crop rotation, natural fertilization, and careful animal husbandry produce food that nourished people, maintained soil health, and worked in harmony with ecosystems. Optimizing solely for efficiency, yield, or profit comes at a cost, and we are paying it now in deteriorating health, polluted land, and weakened food systems. Fortunately, some farmers are reclaiming these practices. Organic and regenerative agriculture, farmers markets, and community-supported agriculture, CSAs, reflect a return to methods that respect natural cycles. Consumers also have power, choosing nutrient-rich food, supporting responsible farmers, and even growing some of your own food helps re-establish a connection to the source of what we eat. Every thoughtful purchase and small garden contributes to restoring balance. We cannot perfectly return to the 1960s. The world has changed, but we can learn from what worked then. Rebuilding soil, raising animals humanely, and producing food for nourishment rather than merely yield are attainable goals. The knowledge exists, the practices exist, and the demand is growing. What's required now is the will to act, individually and collectively, to create food systems that serve both people and the planet. By blending past wisdom with modern awareness, we can reclaim the health, flavor, and sustainability that industrial agriculture sacrificed. Progress should not just be about efficiency or convenience. It must also be about nourishing people and respecting the land that sustains us. The path forward lies in learning from what worked, choosing better food, and demanding practices that prioritize life over profit. Animals ate what nature intended. If you grew up in the 1960s, you probably saw cows grazing in pastures, chickens scratching in the dirt, and pigs rooting in the mud. These weren't just quaint rural scenes. They reflected how animals were meant to live and eat. Cows are ruminants, designed to digest grass. In the 60s, that's exactly what they ate: grass, clover, and hay, rotated across pastures to keep the land healthy. Grass-fed cows produce meat and milk rich in omega-3s and conjugated linoleic acid, leaner yet more flavorful, with milk tinted yellow from beta-carotene. Chickens weren't fast-growing, genetically modified broilers. They lived several months outdoors, scratching for bugs, eating seeds, and dust bathing. Their eggs had deep orange yolks, thick shells, and more vitamins A, D, and E, plus omega-3s. Pigs roamed freely, ate kitchen scraps and garden waste along with grain, and developed muscle naturally. Their meat was marbled and flavorful, with no growth hormones or cramped gestation crates. Animals followed seasonal cycles. Cows calved in spring, chickens laid more eggs in summer, so food was available at peak nutrition and flavor, even if not year-round. Natural diets created diverse, complete nutrition. Modern factory farming has stripped away this natural rhythm in diet, producing meat and eggs that are calorically dense but nutritionally poor, while causing environmental harm and animal suffering. When animals live natural lives, they provide food that truly nourishes. The 1960s remind us that good food comes from respecting nature's design, not overriding it for efficiency. Produce actually had flavor. Do you remember biting into a tomato in the 1960s? Juice would run down your chin, flavor exploding in your mouth, sweet, tangy, complex. A tomato needed nothing else, maybe a pinch of salt, and it rivaled any dessert. Try that with a modern supermarket tomato. It's like biting into damp cardboard. No juice, no flavor, no soul. 60s tomatoes were heirloom varieties, passed down through generations for flavor, nutrition, and adaptation to local conditions. Names like Brandywine, Cherokee Purple, and Mortgage Lifter weren't quaint labels. They represented decades of careful seed saving. They were harvested ripe, often delivered from vine to table within hours. Modern tomatoes are picked green, bred to survive shipping and shelf life, sacrificing taste for durability. The same story repeats across produce. Apples once came in dozens of local varieties, each with its own flavor and purpose. Corn, picked fresh from the garden, burst with sugary juice, far richer than today's super sweet, long-lasting varieties. Strawberries were small, fragrant, and fragile, eaten within days, unlike today's pale, hardy, long-lasting berries. This loss of flavor isn't just about enjoyment. Flavor compounds often correlate with nutrition. Breeding for shelf life and shipping durability diminishes phytonutrients, robbing food of health benefits. Produce ripened naturally develops its full complement of vitamins and minerals. Artificially ripened fruit cannot. Taste tests consistently favor heirloom varieties grown organically over conventional modern produce. People describe them as intense, real, and unforgettable. The food of a time when flavor and nutrition were priorities. The 1960s marked the end of that era. Since then, profit and logistics have taken precedence, and we've been eating blander, less nutritious food ever since. Milk came straight from the dairy. If you lived in the 1960s, you might remember the milk truck making its morning rounds. While you were still asleep, the milkman would leave glass bottles of fresh milk on your doorstep. Your mother would bring them in, and there it was, a layer of cream floating on top, ready to shake in or pour off for coffee or butter. That milk bore almost no resemblance to today's supermarket jugs. It was only a day or two old, from local dairies sourcing cows on pasture. You could taste the difference. Raw milk, still widely available then, contained beneficial bacteria, enzymes, and immunoglobulins that aid digestion and support immunity, elements destroyed by modern pasteurization. Even standard pasteurized milk back then was minimally processed, heated just enough to kill harmful bacteria, unlike today's ultra-pasteurized milk, which destroys nutrients, alters proteins, and changes flavor. Glass bottles made a difference too. Inert and reusable, they left no chemical traces or waste. The cream on top indicated quality and pasture-fed cows, producing milk richer in nutrients. Homogenized modern milk may look uniform, but its altered fat structure is harder to digest. And the dominant Holstein breeds produce more milk, but with lower butter fat and nutritional value. Short shelf life, forced local distribution, and ensured freshness. Modern milk can last weeks unopened, convenient but stripped of vitality. The milk your mother brought in from the doorstep wasn't just a beverage, it was a living food, connecting you to nearby cows and the farmers who tended them. Some people are rediscovering minimally processed milk from grass-fed cows, and the difference in taste and vitality is immediate. Your body recognizes real food when it gets it. Bread was made with 4 ingredients: Walk into any home in the 1960s when bread was being baked, and you'd be hit with an aroma that made your mouth water. Fresh bread cooling on the counter was a daily occurrence, not a special treat. It was made with 4 simple ingredients: flour, water, salt, and yeast, nothing more. Local bakeries operated in almost every neighborhood. Bakers worked before dawn, mixing dough, letting it rise, shaping loaves, and baking them so they were ready for the morning. The bread was crusty on the outside, soft and airy on the inside, and utterly flavorful. No preservatives meant it went stale in a day or two, which wasn't a problem. You bought what you needed, ate it fresh, or turned it into toast or breadcrumbs. This cycle connected people to their local baker and ensured they always had bread at its peak. Many families baked their own bread, a skill passed down through generations. Kneading dough, watching it rise, and pulling a loaf from the oven was practical, meditative, and rewarding. Modern supermarket bread couldn't be more different. Dozens of additives, preservatives, dough conditioners, sweeteners, emulsifiers keep it soft and mold-free for weeks, but rob it of flavor, texture, and nutrition. Traditional bread had substance. It held together in a sandwich, but still offered a satisfying chew. Its long fermentation preserved nutrients and made it easier to digest. Industrial bread, by contrast, combines over-hybridized wheat, heavily processed flour, and rushed fermentation, producing a product your body struggles to process. Fresh daily baking made bread a living tradition, connecting people to their food, community, and centuries of culinary knowledge. Modern convenience has come at the cost of nutrition, flavor, and the simple joy of real bread. Chickens had real lives. In the 1960s, if you wanted chicken for dinner, you might have gone out to the backyard coop. Many suburban and rural families kept small flocks that scratched the yard, ate bugs and kitchen scraps, and provided eggs and occasional meat. Even if you didn't raise them yourself, the chickens that ended up on your plate had lived real lives. They were heritage breeds, growing slowly and developing strong muscles from roaming freely. Their diet was diverse: grain, grass, insects, worms, and kitchen scraps, which produced meat that was firmer, more flavorful, lower in fat, and richer in healthy fatty acids. A chicken might live 6 months before processing, compared to modern broilers reaching slaughter weight in 6 weeks. Today's birds are crowded in sheds, never seeing sunlight, and genetically bred to grow so fast their legs can barely support them. Egg production used to follow natural cycles: more eggs in long summer days, fewer in winter. Now, artificial lighting forces year-round production. Backyard chickens were part of a sustainable system. They consumed food scraps, fertilized gardens, controlled pests, and produced eggs and meat as byproducts. Their eggs were remarkable: thick shells, dark orange yolks that stood proudly in the pan, full of omega-3s, vitamins A and E, and beta-carotene. Free-ranging diets gave each egg unique flavor, reflecting what the bird ate that day. This was food connected to the natural world. You could see how the chickens lived, what they ate, and how they behaved. Modern factory farming severed that connection, prioritizing efficiency over health, flavor, and transparency. The result? Chickens that live unnatural lives and produce eggs and meat of far lower nutritional quality, while we lose a daily link to the rhythms of nature. Gardens were everywhere. Drive through any suburban neighborhood in the 1960s during summer, and you'd see vegetable gardens in almost every backyard. This wasn't just a hobby or a quaint activity. For many families, the garden was an important source of food that supplemented what they bought at the store. The tradition of home gardening had been reinforced by victory gardens during World War II. Families had learned to grow their own food to support the war effort, and many continued the practice afterward. It saved money, provided fresher produce than the store, and gave people a sense of self-sufficiency. Family plots were carefully tended affairs. Parents taught children how to plant seeds, thin seedlings, pull weeds, and harvest at the right time. This knowledge passed from generation to generation, connecting people to the land and the seasons in a way that's been lost for most Americans today. The gardens were diverse, with multiple varieties of tomatoes, several types of lettuce, beans, peas, carrots, radishes, cucumbers, squash, peppers, and whatever else grew well in the local climate. This diversity meant a constant supply of different vegetables throughout the growing season. Seed saving was common practice. At the end of the season, you'd let some of your best plants go to seed, collect those seeds, dry them, and store them for next year. This practice not only saved money, but also created varieties that were perfectly adapted to your specific growing conditions. The seeds being saved were open-pollinated varieties, not the hybrids that dominate today. Open-pollinated seeds grow true from generation to generation. The tomato you grew this year from saved seeds would be the same as the tomato you grew last year. This stability and reliability made seed saving practical and worthwhile. Compare that to modern hybrid seeds that don't grow true from saved seed, forcing gardeners to buy new seeds every year. Even worse are genetically modified seeds that come with legal restrictions preventing seed saving. The seed companies have turned what was once every farmer and gardener's right into a profit center. Seasonal eating was built into the garden cycle. You ate lettuce and radishes in spring, tomatoes and cucumbers in summer, squash and root vegetables in fall. You ate what was ripe, and you looked forward to each vegetable's season. This created a natural variety in the diet that matched what your body needed at different times of year. The practice of gardening also meant physical activity, time outside, and connection to natural cycles. You learned patience waiting for seeds to germinate and plants to mature. You learned observation, watching for pests or signs of disease. You learned problem solving, figuring out why one plant thrived while another struggled. The food from these gardens was at peak nutrition because it went from the garden to the kitchen within hours, sometimes minutes. No time for vitamin loss, no storage, no shipping, just food as fresh as possible, grown in soil you'd nurtured, without chemicals, because you didn't need them in a diverse garden ecosystem. Many families also maintain fruit trees and berry bushes. Apple, pear, peach, and cherry trees were common. Strawberry patches, raspberry canes, and blackberry bushes provided fruit throughout summer. Again, this was food at peak ripeness and nutrition, eaten within hours of harvest. The abundance from these gardens was shared within communities. If you had more tomatoes than you could use, you'd give some to neighbors. They'd reciprocate with extra zucchini or beans. This sharing strengthened community bonds and ensured nothing went to waste. Preserving the harvest was another skill everyone knew. Canning, freezing, pickling, and making jams and jellies extended the garden's bounty through winter. Root vegetables were stored in cool basements. The connection between summer's growth and winter's sustenance was immediate and obvious. This whole system of home food production has largely disappeared. Most Americans don't have gardens. Those who do often treat it as a hobby rather than a food source. The knowledge of how to grow, save seeds, preserve, and store food has been lost by multiple generations. We've become completely dependent on industrial food systems that prioritize profit over nutrition. Processing was minimal. When your grandmother decided to preserve food in the 1960s, she didn't add a bunch of chemicals to extend shelf life. She used time-tested methods that had worked for generations. Canning, freezing, drying, and pickling preserved food using simple techniques that maintain most of the nutritional value. Canning at home was a regular summer activity. As vegetables and fruits ripened in the garden or came into season at local farms, families would spend weekends canning. Tomatoes became sauce and salsa. Cucumbers became pickles. Peaches and berries became jams and preserves. Green beans, corn, and other vegetables were canned plain to be used in winter meals. The process was straightforward. Clean jars, prepare the food, fill the jars, process them in boiling water, or a pressure canner to kill bacteria and create a seal. The result was food preserved with no additives beyond what might naturally be in the recipe, like the vinegar in pickles or sugar in jam. Simple preservation methods like these maintain the integrity of the food. Yes, some nutrients were lost in the heating process, but the food remained real food. When you opened a jar of home-canned tomatoes in January, you were eating tomatoes, not tomatoes plus a dozen preservatives and stabilizers. Freezing became more common as home freezers became affordable in the 50s and 60s. This was an even better preservation method because it maintained more nutrients. Blanch the vegetables briefly, cool them, bag them, and freeze. In winter, you'd have vegetables that were almost as nutritious as fresh. No additives were needed for freezing. The low temperature was the preservation method. Compare that to modern frozen foods that often include all kinds of additives, even though freezing alone would preserve them just fine. The additives are there to improve texture after thawing or to make them more convenient, not because they're necessary. Drying was another simple method. Apples, apricots, herbs, and other foods could be dried in the sun or in a low oven. The concentrated sugars and low moisture content prevented spoilage. Again, no chemicals needed, just the food itself, transformed by the removal of water. The emphasis was always on real ingredients. When your grandmother made jam, it was fruit, sugar, and pectin. When she made pickles, it was cucumbers, vinegar, salt, and spices. Every ingredient was something you'd recognize and probably had in your own kitchen. Modern processed foods are the opposite. Look at a jar of commercial spaghetti sauce and count the ingredients. 30 or more isn't unusual, many of them chemicals you couldn't pronounce or wouldn't keep at home. High fructose corn syrup to make it sweeter, xanthan gum to thicken it, sodium benzoate to preserve it, artificial flavors to compensate for using poor quality tomatoes. The difference in taste is obvious. Home-canned tomato sauce made with garden tomatoes tastes like tomatoes. Commercial sauce tastes like sugar and spices because they're trying to cover up the lack of real tomato flavor. The same pattern repeats across every processed food category. The nutritional difference is equally stark. Food preserved with minimal processing maintains most of its vitamins, minerals, and beneficial compounds. Heavily processed food loses nutrition at every step. The ingredients are lower quality to start with. Then nutrients are destroyed in processing. Then more nutrients degrade during the extended shelf life that all those additives make possible. There's also the issue of what all these additives do to your body. Many common food additives have been linked to health problems. Some are potential carcinogens. Others disrupt hormones. Many contribute to digestive issues. Your body has no idea what to do with these synthetic chemicals. When you ate food preserved using traditional methods in the 1960s, your body recognized it as food and knew how to process it. Every ingredient had been part of the human diet for thousands of years. Your digestive system had evolved to handle it. Modern processed foods are foreign to your biology. Your body doesn't have the enzymatic machinery to properly deal with all these synthetic additives. Is it any wonder that rates of digestive disorders, food allergies, and sensitivities have skyrocketed? The chemical revolution changed everything. After World War II ended in 1945, companies that had been producing explosives and poison gas found themselves with factories and expertise, but no war to supply. They needed new markets for their products and found them in agriculture. By the 1960s, the chemical revolution in agriculture was gaining momentum. The promise was seductive. Use these new synthetic pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers, and you'd get higher yields with less labor. Pests and weeds would be controlled easily. Crops would grow faster and bigger. The introduction of pesticides like DDT seemed like a miracle at first. Spray this chemical and insects died. Fields that had been plagued by pests were suddenly clean. Yields went up. Farmers made more money. What wasn't to love? But there were problems that wouldn't become apparent for years. DDT didn't just kill pest insects, it killed beneficial insects too. It accumulated in soil and water. It moved up the food chain, concentrating in the bodies of birds and other animals. Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, published in 1962, documented how DDT was causing bird populations to crash. The response from the chemical companies was to attack Carson and her work. They had billions of dollars at stake and weren't about to let one scientist's concerns slow down their profitable business. But eventually, the evidence became overwhelming, and DDT was banned in the United States in 1972. Synthetic fertilizers were another supposed miracle. Instead of building soil health through crop rotation and composting, you could just pour these chemicals on the field and crops would grow. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in concentrated form delivered right to the plants. What wasn't understood, or was ignored, was that this approach bypassed and eventually destroyed the natural soil ecosystem. The beneficial microorganisms that made nutrients available to plants weren't needed anymore, so they died off. The soil became a lifeless medium that held plants upright while chemicals fed them. This created a dependency. Once the soil ecosystem was damaged, farmers had to keep using synthetic fertilizers because the natural nutrient cycling was broken. The chemical companies had created a captive market. This wasn't an accident. Herbicides joined pesticides and fertilizers in the chemical arsenal. Why spend time and labor pulling weeds or cultivating when you could spray a chemical and kill everything that wasn't your crop? Products like atrazine and later glyphosate promised weed-free fields with minimal effort. Again, there were unintended consequences that took time to manifest. These chemicals didn't stay where they were sprayed. They ran off into waterways. They drifted on the wind to neighboring properties. They persisted in soil. And they killed plants indiscriminately, damaging the biodiversity that healthy ecosystems need. The legacy of DDT extends beyond the ban. While it's no longer used in the United States, DDT persists in the environment for decades. It's still found in soil, water, and the bodies of animals and people. Its breakdown products are actually more toxic than DDT itself. We'll be dealing with the consequences of DDT use for generations. But the chemical industry learned nothing from the DDT experience except to be better at public relations. New pesticides replace DDT, each with its own set of problems. Organophosphates, neonicotinoids, and dozens of other classes of pesticides continued the same pattern. Short-term benefits, long-term damage. The impact on human health has been significant but hard to quantify because it's cumulative and interacts with many other factors. But we know that pesticide exposure is linked to increased cancer risk, neurological problems, hormone disruption, and developmental issues in children. Farm workers who are exposed to high levels of these chemicals experience much higher rates of certain cancers and other health problems. But even consumers who eat conventionally grown produce are exposed to pesticide residues with every meal. The promise was that we'd need less chemicals over time as we learn to use them better. The reality has been the opposite. Pesticide use has increased steadily since the 1960s. Pests develop resistance, requiring stronger chemicals or higher doses. The treadmill keeps spinning faster. Organic farming, which rejected this chemical approach, was marginalized and dismissed as backward. Farmers who wanted to continue traditional practices were made to feel foolish for resisting progress. The pressure to adopt chemical agriculture was enormous, both from the companies selling the products and from the universities and government agencies they had influenced. By the end of the 1960s, the transition was well underway. The farming practices that had created nutrient-dense, flavorful food were being replaced by chemical-intensive industrial agriculture. The food looked the same, but what was inside had begun to change. Factory farming took over. The 1960s marked the acceleration of a process that had begun in the 50s. Farms were getting larger, and the methods were becoming more industrial. The family farm with diverse crops and animals was giving way to specialized operations focused on maximum production of a single commodity. Confined animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, represented this new approach at its most extreme. Instead of cows grazing in pastures, they were kept in feedlots, standing in mud and manure, eating corn instead of grass. Instead of chickens scratching in the yard, they were packed into huge sheds, thousands of birds in confined darkness. The logic was pure efficiency. Why let animals waste energy moving around when that energy could go into growth? Why let them eat a varied diet when you could formulate a feed that maximized weight gain? Every decision was made to optimize profit per animal, with no consideration for animal welfare or food. Quality. Efficiency over quality became the mantra. It didn't matter if feedlot beef was less flavorful and less nutritious than grass-fed beef. It could be produced cheaper and faster. It didn't matter if factory-farmed chicken tasted like cardboard. The profit margin was better. Disease management became a huge issue in these concentrated operations. When you pack thousands of animals into a small space, disease spreads rapidly. The solution wasn't to reduce crowding or improve conditions. The solution was antibiotics. Routine antibiotic use became standard practice. Animals weren't given antibiotics because they were sick. They were given antibiotics every day to prevent disease, and because antibiotics somehow made animals gain weight faster. This wasn't medicine. This was using drugs as a crutch to allow inhumane conditions. The public health consequences of this practice are still unfolding. The overuse of antibiotics in livestock has contributed significantly to the rise of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. When bacteria are constantly exposed to antibiotics, they evolve resistance. These resistant bacteria can then spread to humans through food, water, or direct contact. We're now facing a situation where common infections are becoming untreatable because the bacteria have developed resistance to our antibiotics. Much of this problem can be traced back to agricultural use of antibiotics that began ramping up in the 1960s and has continued ever since. The animals in these operations lived miserable lives. Chickens bred to grow so fast their legs couldn't support them. Pigs kept in crates so small they couldn't turn around. Cows standing in mud, eating food that made them sick, pumped full of antibiotics to keep them alive long enough to reach slaughter weight. This wasn't just cruel, it affected the food these animals produced. Stress hormones, inflammatory compounds, and the effects of unnatural diets all changed the nutritional composition of meat and eggs. The food was inferior in every measurable way, but it was cheaper. And that's what mattered in an increasingly industrialized food system. Consumers were being trained to prioritize low prices over quality. The real cost of industrial meat and environmental damage, animal suffering, and nutritional poverty was hidden and externalized. The consolidation of agriculture into fewer and larger operations also concentrated power. A handful of companies came to dominate meat production, processing, and distribution. These companies could dictate terms to farmers and consumers alike. They controlled the system from farm to supermarket. This corporate control meant that even farmers who wanted to raise animals humanely faced enormous obstacles. They couldn't compete on price with factory farms. They had trouble finding processing facilities willing to handle small numbers of animals. The distribution system was set up for large-scale industrial production. The family farms that had been the backbone of American agriculture for generations were being squeezed out. Some sold to larger operations. Others held on, but had to adopt industrial methods to survive. The knowledge and practices that had created high-quality food were being lost. By the end of the 1960s, the direction was clear. Agriculture was becoming an industry, not a way of life. Animals were becoming production units, not living beings. Food was becoming a commodity, not nutrition. The consequences of these changes would only become fully apparent in the decades to come. Food became a product, not nutrition. Somewhere between the farm and your plate in the 1960s, food began to change its nature. It stopped being primarily about nutrition and became primarily about profit. This transformation happened gradually, quietly enough, that most people didn't notice until it was complete. By the time the industrial food system dominated, an entire generation had forgotten what real food tasted like or how it nourished. Corporate agriculture was consolidating power. Large companies bought smaller farms and processing facilities, standardizing practices to maximize efficiency and minimize cost. Every decision, from seed selection to distribution, was guided by shareholder value rather than consumer health or food quality. Profit margins in agriculture are notoriously thin, especially for commodity crops. To improve them, corporations focused on volume and cost reduction. Grow more with less labor, process faster, extend shelf life, and reduce waste. The objective was never flavor, texture, or nutrition. It was production at scale. Quality quickly became secondary, if it was considered at all. Why breed tomatoes for taste when they could be bred to ship well and last long on supermarket shelves? Why age meat to develop flavor when it could reach the market faster? Why use superior ingredients when cheaper substitutes achieve the same visual effect? Over time, the expectation of quality eroded. People no longer remembered what food was supposed to taste like, making it easy to prioritize profit over substance. Shelf life became a central goal. The longer a product could sit on a shelf without spoiling, the more efficient the distribution system and the greater the profit. But extending shelf life required changing the food itself. Preservatives, stabilizers, and other additives became standard, allowing products to last weeks, months, or even years without refrigeration. From a business standpoint, this made sense. From a nutritional standpoint, it was disastrous. Real food spoils because it contains nutrients that bacteria and fungi consume. When even microorganisms won't eat it, that should raise a warning. The nutritional decline since the 1960s is well documented. Studies comparing produce from then and now reveal dramatic drops in protein, calcium, iron, vitamin C, and many other nutrients. A modern tomato contains perhaps half the vitamin C of one grown in 1960. Apples have a fraction of the iron they once provided. Across the produce aisle, the story repeats. More calories, fewer nutrients. The causes are multiple and interconnected. Depleted soils fail to provide minerals. Plants bred for yield over nutrition produce more food with less nutrient density. Early harvesting prevents full development of vitamins. Long storage degrades what little remains. Every stage of modern production contributes to nutritional poverty. The same pattern appears in meat and eggs. Factory farmed chicken is fattier and less protein-rich than its 1960s counterpart. Its fat contains more omega-6 fatty acids and fewer beneficial omega-3s. Eggs contain less vitamin A, vitamin E, and omega-3s. This shift happened slowly enough that each generation accepted it as normal. People forgot the taste of ripe fruits and vegetables, the firm texture of real meat, and the deep orange yolks of pastured eggs. The food industry took advantage of this collective amnesia. Quality could be reduced while profits increased, as long as appearance remained convincing. Price became the primary metric for consumers because quality was no longer visible or accessible. Marketing stepped in to fill the gap. If food lacked flavor, add artificial taste. If it lacked nutrition, claim health benefits on the label. Appearance and advertising replaced substance. This is how we arrived at a situation where supermarkets are full of products that look and smell like food, yet fail to nourish us. We are overfed but undernourished, consuming more calories than ever, while our bodies starve for real nutrients. The 1960s marked the tipping point. At that moment, the old ways still existed in memory and practice for some, but industrial methods were gaining dominance. Within another decade, most people would know nothing else. The benchmark, the taste, texture, and nutrition of real food would be lost forever. What we lost in the name of progress. The changes in agriculture and food production since the 1960s were sold to us as progress. Modern methods promised higher yields, lower costs, and better living. Some of that promise came true. Certain foods did become cheaper, more abundant, and convenient. But the real costs were hidden, and they are now impossible to ignore. What we lost in the name of progress was precisely what food is supposed to provide: nutrition, health, and connection. Food no longer nourishes in the way it once did. It merely fills. Nutrient density comparisons are stark. Take broccoli. To get the same amount of calcium your grandmother received from one serving in 1960, you'd need 3 servings today. For iron, 5. The broccoli looks the same, but it is hollow, a shadow of its former nutritional self. This pattern repeats across almost every category. Meat contains less protein and more fat. Eggs, fewer vitamins. Fruits, less vitamin C. Vegetables, fewer. The minerals. The decline is pervasive, gradual, and largely invisible. The health implications are enormous. Obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and autoimmune disorders are at epidemic levels. While multiple factors contribute, the degradation of our food supply is central. Our bodies require a full spectrum of nutrients: vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, amino acids, and thousands of phytonutrients working together in ways science is only beginning to understand. When food is depleted, chronic malnutrition sets in, even while overeating. You can consume 3 meals a day and still lack magnesium, vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, and dozens of other essential nutrients. Hunger signals persist, urging your body to seek what it needs. But if the food itself is depleted, you simply gain weight without improving health. Mental health suffers too. Neurotransmitter function and brain chemistry rely on proper nutrition. Deficiencies in magnesium, zinc, B12, folate, and omega-3s are linked to depression, anxiety, and cognitive problems. The connection to the land has been severed. In the 1960s, people understood food came from farms. Gardens, relatives on farms, and local markets provided living memory of how food was grown. Today, most Americans buy food wrapped in plastic from supermarkets, with no sense of soil, sun, or seasons. Inferior food is easier to accept when you've lost comparison points. High-quality food still exists: organic produce, grass-fed meat, pastured eggs, but it is expensive and inaccessible to many. Wealthier people can access nutrition and better health, while poorer communities are left with cheap, industrially produced calories that fail to nourish. This is not progress. Abundance without nutrition is a cruel illusion. You can fill your cart and still be malnourished. True progress would restore the connection between food, health, and the land, something we have lost and urgently need to reclaim. Looking at 1960s farming from today, it's clear we went astray. Industrial agriculture promised higher yields and lower costs, but delivered depleted food and environmental damage. Sure, modern supermarkets offer endless variety, but variety without nutrition isn't progress. The lessons of the past are clear. Traditional farming wasn't backward. It nourished people, maintained soil, and worked sustainably. Efficiency for profit over nutrition has long-term costs we're paying now in health and environmental decline. Fortunately, some farmers are returning to these methods through organic and regenerative practices, farmers markets, and CSAs. Consumers hold power too, Choosing better food and growing some of your own reclaims connection and control. We can't perfectly return to the 60s, but we can learn from it, rebuild soil, raise animals humanely, and grow food for nourishment, not just yield. The knowledge exists. What's needed is the will to act. So remember what food used to be. Share that knowledge, make different choices when you can, support the people trying to do better, and never accept that inferior food is good enough. You deserve the nutrition that people in the 1960s took for granted. We all do.